Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a framework that honestly, fundamentally changes how we understand the media that surrounds us every single day. We're going to unpack the exact mechanics of how modern ads are meticulously constructed using something called metaphoric architecture. The core idea here? It's to reveal why the ads that actually stick in your brain aren't just cleverly written, they are highly engineered. We're going to break down the specific blueprints behind modern messaging, showing you exactly how abstract ideas are turned into undeniable persuasion.
Now, the source material makes a really bold, uncompromising statement right out of the gate: metaphors as the new language. And it's not just suggesting metaphors are, a nice little literary device to sprinkle on top of a campaign just to make the copy sound pretty. No, it's asserting that metaphors have become the actual foundational language of modern advertising. Think about it for a second. Instead of an ad just telling you a cleaning product is highly effective, it visually transforms the dirt into a literal monster being vanquished. If you aren't speaking this new, conceptually driven language, well, your message simply isn't being heard in the modern landscape.
So let's jump right into Section 1, the metaphoric architecture.
The absolutely crucial point here is that word architecture. It implies a highly calculated structural integrity, right? A metaphor in this context is not just a fresh coat of paint on a building, it is the load-bearing wall. It's the steel frame. Creating a modern ad actually requires an architect's mindset. Take a life insurance ad, for example. Instead of just listing off boring policies, the entire campaign is built around the metaphor of a physical fortress protecting a family from a massive storm. Every visual, every single word of copy, every sound cue, it all serves that central structure. You're taking abstract concepts, like security, and using metaphors as literal building blocks to construct a message that holds serious weight.
Now, by focusing specifically on the word modern, the text is pointing out a deliberate and frankly necessary evolution in current media practices. So why did this shift happen? Simple. The market reached absolute saturation. Consumers developed ad blindness. What worked in the past, explicitly listing features, shouting about discounts, claiming you have the best product, it simply stopped registering. People became way too smart and honestly too overwhelmed for literal claims. The modern landscape absolutely requires this architectural approach to bypass that cognitive filter. It's all about delivering an emotional concept so seamlessly that the consumer absorbs the message before they even realize they're being pitched to. Which brings us seamlessly to Section 2, the new language.
This comparison really highlights the massive paradigm shift introduced by our source. The old language relied entirely on explicit, literal messaging. Think of an old car commercial simply stating, "Our engine has 300 horsepower." Sure, it's direct, but it completely lacks emotional depth. The new language, on the other hand, engineers a conceptual framework right in your mind. Instead of reciting specs, the new language shows the car morphing into a Black Panther sprinting through a neon-lit city. It doesn't tell you the car is fast. It builds the concept of predatory speed, sleekness, and power directly in your brain. It's a completely different way of engineering a message from the ground up.
Interestingly, the source text frames its insights as an application module. It operates kind of like a masterclass or a targeted toolset designed to break down this complex linguistic engineering into actual actionable skills. So we aren't just passively observing how advertising works here, we're engaging with a specific functional blueprint. It's meant to train us to spot this new language out in the wild and ultimately understand the precise mechanics of how to wield it ourselves.
All right, moving forward to Section 3, approaching the metaphor. There is a super clear, highly intentional, two-step progression laid out here for mastering this technique. First, you have the approach, and second, you have the application. And the source insists on this linear progression for a very specific reason. If advertisers jump straight to Step 2 without mastering Step 1, the whole thing falls apart. The result is a weak, disconnected metaphor that just collapses under its own weight. You end up with one of those confusing ads where the visuals don't match the product at all. Mastering the underlying theory first is what ensures the structural integrity of your final campaign.
So before we can build, we have to master the approach. Basically, this means understanding the actual mechanics of how a metaphor transfers meaning. The source details this really cool process of mapping a target domain, which is your product, to a source domain, which is the emotional concept you want to evoke. So if your target domain is, say, a high-speed internet router, your source domain might be a jet engine or a lightning strike. The approach is the meticulous process of isolating the exact emotional resonance of that source domain and mapping its characteristics directly onto your product. You have to ensure absolute conceptual alignment before a single piece of creative is ever even produced.
Okay, let's wrap things up with Section 4, Application in Advertisements. This brings us to the application phase, where all that theory finally becomes practice. Actually applying this architecture involves a strict step-by-step execution. First off, you identify the core emotion your product needs to convey. Second, you select the perfect source domain that inherently carries that specific emotion. And finally, and this is definitely the most important part, you map all your visual and copy assets exclusively to that domain. You never ever break the metaphor. If you've chosen the metaphor of a marathon for a long-lasting battery, every single piece of that ad must reinforce endurance, pacing, and crossing the finish line. The real skill is in maintaining that structural consistency from the very first frame right down to the final call to action.
Summarizing this whole journey, the true value of this framework really lies in the tangible outcomes it provides. You don't just walk away knowing that metaphors exist. You understand the precise mechanics of mapping target and source domains. You gain the active skill to map visual and emotional assets flawlessly. And ultimately, you possess the structural blueprint required to construct modern advertisements that actually cut through all that market saturation by speaking directly to human psychology.
To wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought drawn straight from the core of this framework. If metaphors truly are the essential architecture of modern advertising, well, what is your next campaign really saying? Are you just decorating a literal claim with some pretty words? Or are you building a structurally sound metaphor that instantly transfers emotion to your audience? Because I promise you, once you see the architecture, you literally cannot unsee it. And it fundamentally changes how you create and consume the media all around you.